All right, Curtis, thanks for joining me. I've only ever heard you once. I'll tell you when it was. Maybe
Okay.
you'll be able to guess as I'm going here, but you were playing as a side musician. It was about 2 years ago now. You played at Fortune Sound Club in Vancouver, and a
Oh yeah.
lot of young people came out to hear Braxton Cook.
Yeah, definitely. That's yeah, that was a fun one. It was yeah, it was a lot of young people and then my cousin who came, like my mom's cousin came, and I remember he was like wearing a suit jacket. There were a bunch of younger people who said like, yeah, we were wondering who that guy was. We thought maybe he was like a music executive or something like that. I said, no, it's my cousin. But yeah, and then it turned into like it turned into like a, dance club after we finished, that was a really fun gig.
You did a whole tour with him back then for his latest release at the time, right? How did that go? Was it a Canadian and US tour? Like, did you play other
Yeah,
shows with
that
him?
was actually the only Canadian date on that West Coast run. But yeah, no, I've been playing with them for when was my first tour with them? It was in fall 2018. So it's been a minute now. It's 7 years, I guess. But the yeah, so we went to China and Japan last fall, and Europe as well. And then yeah, we've done a lot of tours in the US and Canada as well. So last year, I think the only other Canadian dates were we did Toronto Jazz Fest last year, and is that the only other one? That might be the only other. Oh no, we did Montreal Jazz Fest as well the year before, I think. So yeah, so we've logged a lot of miles. We've got some stuff coming up in the fall. Oh, and we're playing with him in San Francisco in a couple weeks. So it'll be fun.
That's awesome. That show was a lot of fun. It was a good introduction to you, but of course, there's so much more going on. This album, we're going to air this after it comes out, so it'll be easy enough to point people to, but I've been fortunate enough to be able to listen to it already at the time we're talking here in late
Right.
May. So that's really cool. And it's an artistic milestone for you because it's the first time you've put out an all original full length project. And it's the first time that you've been a lyricist as well as composer. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. This is my first. I like, aside from, as a kid when I first started playing and everything, I dabbled a little bit, and then once I got into jazz, I sort of didn't. I always wrote music, but it was like, oh, I can just write instrumental, great. So I never really, aside from the odd thing here and there. But then recently, I got into trying, and I thankfully had some help in that. Joey Landreth, who's like a award-winning songwriter and one of my oldest friends, co-produced the record, so he helped me a lot. And also Joanna Majoko, we did a lot of co-writing together as well. So yeah, so I thankfully could collaborate a little bit, but the yeah, it was a fun experience, fun dealing with language, instead of just expressing everything instrumentally.
Yeah, before I get to the sound of the music, I want to talk about maybe some of the lyrical stuff and some of the title related stuff too. When did you know that you were going to title the album I'm Doing My Best? And maybe you could talk about if it was a long road or what kind of road you had into manifesting this project for yourself and starting to put it together.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It's funny you ask, because like it it settled on the title like while after we had already recorded, and while I was working on editing and doing post production and putting stuff together. And it's especially like, yeah, just trying to keep track of all that stuff. And I have a young son, and like doing that, I've got pretty severe ADHD, and staying on task is a pretty tough thing. Back in the day, I used to be able to just, prior to being a parent, I could just hyper focus and power through. So it'd just be like 8 hours goes by, and then, oh, I got the job done though, so it's great. Now it's like I have to be able to shift gears, and it's a lot. And so the term "I'm doing my best" comes up a lot, in the house. Like, well, I didn't get to this thing, but whatever, I'm doing my best. The so it sort of started out as a joke, but then it became just sort of like a bit of a mantra, because it was like sometimes it was tongue in cheek, but sometimes just that's literally it. That's all you can do. It's like, we do our best, instead of like setting some standard that's always out of reach of whatever we're capable of at any given time. Musicians are famous for doing that, but I think all people do that, in terms of like it's always going to be like X plus 1, where X is what you're capable of and plus 1 is what you think you're supposed to have done, you know. And it's like we can just do our best, and that's okay, you know.
Yeah, the tension between what you're doing and what you think you're capable of is an interesting one for you to emphasize there, because on one hand, you described how that theme is so important to you and your individual situation and your house and your family, etc. But I bet that a lot of the other musicians you collaborated with would find that the theme resonates with them as well, even if their situations are very different from yours. And it's
Oh,
because of what you just
100%. Yeah.
described.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it's like it's just an ongoing thing. And a lot of us are driven by like, you know, I've been thinking about this a lot too, in terms of trying to reframe some of it, because a lot of us are driven by wanting to just wanting to get better, right? Like when you first start getting into playing music or any other kind of creative pursuit or anything that you're just very passionate about, it's like you want to learn more about it, and it's a very genuine like, wow, this is really cool, what is this? And then once you get into it, you're like, oh, I got to get a lot better at this thing. I'm going to get better, I'm going to get better, I'm going to get better. As you get older, it becomes like okay, you know, am I just always going to be stuck in a cycle of like wanting to be better? Or like, I'm willing to bet that if you like, you know, were able to sort of separate it from the idea of getting better and actually just like, you know, what is the part of this that brings me joy? What do I connect to? What do I like, you know, do I just want to learn more about music because I love it, or more about life because I love it, whatever the thing is. I'm willing to bet that you will just get better as a side product, like as a byproduct, you know, at that thing, rather than focusing on the fact that there's something about me that needs to be fixed at all times. There's something I need to be doing better all the time, you know. So really trying to think about that a lot lately. Like, if you know, if we just let ourselves be, like a lot of the research and everything too, that's, you know, that song I'm Learning to Be Kind, a lot of that is, you know, based on sort of learning how to, you know, be kind to yourself and compassionate to yourself and treat yourself the way you would treat your friends or family members or whatever. And a lot of the research shows that like being hard on yourself doesn't actually make anyone any more productive than, you know, not that productive is our only goal, but like being hard on yourself doesn't actually make you, you know, people think, oh, well, if I'm just let myself off the hook, I just won't do anything. It's like, actually, if you let yourself off the hook, a lot of the research shows it's the opposite. It's like, if you just let yourself be, you're actually more likely to just, because it removes the pressure of that, more likely to actually just do the thing that you want to do, you know, without all the external pressure to do it on whatever level you think you're supposed to or whatever, you know.
Or I mean, like if I'm thinking about how it could show up for myself, even as long as you take a time horizon that's longer than like a single day, there could be a come down and then you're in a new place kind of thing. If you
Right.
reached that attitude for a little while, yeah, maybe you would kind of have this forced cool down period where you would kind of you finally manage to chill in a sense, or be able to see things in a fresh way or something, and then maybe you're kind of down in the dumps or low for a little while, but then if you ride that out, and you don't, you know, get too concerned about that, and you can manage to ride that out, then you can be a new place afterward maybe.
Right. Yeah. And we, you know, the like feelings are temporary. Like the brain didn't even evolve to have thoughts and feelings. Like it literally just evolved to like keep all of our increasingly complex organ systems running. All the thoughts and feelings and sentience and existential, you know, pondering and everything came just later. It just developed over time, you know. So like we're still operating on the same, like, you know, primordial hardware that, you know, our ancestors had and whatever, which is just literally like, is this a threat or not, you know? And that's where all this like being in fight or flight all the time comes from. And so yeah, so we like, yeah, all these things, like these feelings are temporary. If you're feeling one way, it's not necessarily going to stay that way. It's going to pass. You're going to look at things in a different light, maybe in like 20 minutes, you know, like if you just like actually let yourself sit with it and actually feel it. But the problem is that we all spend so much energy trying to avoid what we're feeling and what we're thinking, and trying to strong arm it and override it and do whatever, myself included, all the time, you know. So so yeah, it's tough, and it's a demanding world. That's why I say, like, the, you know, this is music for healing in an increasingly demanding world. And I feel like, a particularly noisy world, you know, like we're constantly connected. Institutions are crumbling, all this, you know, like just everything it's a mess, and we can't even ignore it because it's just everywhere, you know. So it's very hard to find some silence and just like be able to sit with anything, you know.
Yeah, you mentioned the song "Kind," which is one of the vocal tracks, one of the
Mhm.
tracks with lyrics. One of my favorite tracks because of a particular musical moment for sure, this crazy beat at the end, and, like, there's some different kinda snare action going on there, and, like, there's this new groove that comes in to,
Oh
like,
yeah, when
ride
you
out
drop
that
into
track
that
of
one,
vamp. I
yeah.
love that.
Yeah, we were sitting on, it was one of those things where like that was always intended to fade out, you know, like we sat onto like another thing, and then it just was like, it's like I can't just, you know, I can't just let this fade out. This is, you know, like I love that groove. So once we like settled into that, it's like we had to sit with that, and then I added some percussion stuff later too to kind of like give it a little more vibe too. So that's a fun one, and that ended up being yeah, that's ended up being one of my favorites for sure.
Did you do something to the sound of the snare in that outro vamp? It sounds, like, more amped up or something too. I'm
Oh,
trying to
it's
remember.
there's two snares. So when I got to that, so that's like the second side, super deep snare that goes boosh.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, I dig that a lot.
nice. Do you play?
I'm a bass player, yeah.
Oh, amazing, cool. Sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't do my research. Yeah,
You
amazing.
don't have to do any research, what are you talking about? So there's an interesting back and forth between those tracks with Joanna singing and with your lyrics and the instrumental tracks. And so the way that it's sequenced throughout the album, it does kinda go back and forth a lot, which is interesting. It gives you both at the same time, it emphasizes both. It's not like, "Oh, here's side A of the album where we have all the songs, and then side B where it's the band jams or something." It's integrated.
Yeah, and it's funny that it didn't really that wasn't even on purpose until you know, I was just like putting the order together, and it was like, yeah, that's a really nice, it's got a really nice flow to it. And then I realized like, oh, it just alternates. Like, but I'm actually just pressing vinyl right now, and the like the vinyl sequence is different, you know, and so like it is cool because it's got also a very cool flow. But of course, when you have to get up and flip the record over, it changes you know, changes the way you approach all of it, you know. And also the medium of vinyl, you can't just put an unlimited amount on each side, so you have to actually like retool it to make it work based on lengths and everything.
Yeah, so, like, for example, the first tune, "We Do We," that's an instrumental. When
Yeah.
you write a tune like that, did you start with one of the guitar riffs, or did you start in the band, or how did you put such a tune like that together? What's it like for you with the
You
instrumentals?
know, I think that one started with that bass line, that doom 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 doom, because like I think sort of the bass line and the that like sort of comping rhythm, which was piano originally, but of course there's no piano on the record. But that's actually the oldest song on the record. Um that one I wrote in 2018 actually. Like that one goes way back because I actually wrote it like about a month after I recorded my last full length record in yeah, we recorded in 2018. It came out in 2019, my self-titled one. And so we've been playing that one live for a while. So it's kind of developed. But yeah, in a case like that, it started with that bass line and comping rhythm. I was listening to a lot of Fela, you know, at the time, which I always kind of intermittently am. But you know, so I had this Afrobeat vibe, and then I just melody came after that, and then added the bridge. But normally we would go, you know, forever we would go to the bridge like we always, to break it up. And then when we recorded it, that's actually just one take, and we like took out the bridge and just played over that main vamp, and that's it, you know. And it kind of worked better actually. The same thing, I added percussion to that one, you know, to yeah, just give it a little more vibe as well.
Yeah, I dig it. There's another kinda juxtaposition that runs through the whole thing. There's the instrumentals and then there's the songs, and they're integrated, they're alternating back and forth all the way. But this is something that I don't know if I've ever really heard on a record, and, like, I've spent time in the folk scene and the jazz scene, so I could really I can really get behind this. And this is one of my favorite things about it, maybe, which is that you have like a balls to the wall contemporary jazz Kurt Rosenwinkel like guitar player in your band, Andrew, and then
Mhm.
you have Joey playing guitar and sing, and like the both of those even on the same track, you
Yeah,
could have a guitar solo that's like full on like modern jazz, and then you have like Joey playing guitar on the track. That's so great.
yeah, they and like it's so funny because Joey and Renfro were like such a natural match. Like they actually hadn't no, what is it? They so like I had put them in touch a long time ago because of course I was like, oh, you got it, you all got to know each other, the because they have a lot of like, even though they do very what on the surface might seem like two like sort of different things, they have like a lot of like really similar influences and similar aesthetics and things that they are into. And so so already I was just like, oh, you all got to know each other. They're both very like, you know, uh no BS, very genuine, like very like no artifice, very like um yeah, they're just like two really genuine cats, and like and they're both really into like have a love of all kinds of music. I mean, like Joey and I met at jazz camp when we were teenagers. I think I was like 14, he was 15. I think he's a year older than me, so 14 and 15. And so like so we've literally known each other for or maybe 15, 16, but we were like in a like jazz combo at jazz camp together. So the so like Joey, and that's like he has a background in jazz as well, even though he didn't like pursue that in life, but and it makes sense because he's a like world class improviser. But sometimes with like guitar especially is like such a wide, you have everything, such a wide range of approaches and sounds and aesthetics and everything, that like putting two guitars together doesn't always work right away. And I was asking them, I was like, does it always happen like this? Like, because they were just like, it was instant. I was like, does it always happen like this? They were like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't always happen like this. Like, this is special. So yeah, it was just like beautiful to hear them together, because I think that was only their second time meeting in person, because it just so happened that Renfro and I were playing with Braxton in Chicago in, what was this, 2023, I think. And Joey just happened to be, he was playing at like this guitar festival they have there. So he just happened to be in town. And he came out to, we were playing at like Navy Pier outside, and they, that was the first time meeting in person. So then the second time they met in person was when we went in the studio and they started playing together, and it was magic right away. So especially, so that one, the Carry You Home, and then the Archer, those two, especially the Archer, because it was so wide open, and we just, originally that tune was faster and everything. It was a totally different thing. I said, let's like run it once slower, and the vibe was so amazing slower that we were like, all right, well, that's what we're doing. Like that's the vibe, so yeah, that one and We Do We are particularly special because they were just like first takes, straight down, couldn't recreate it if we tried, like those kind of, which is a beautiful thing in the studio when you like, if you can get it on the first take, that like tends to be what happens, right? First take, best vibe, but like with some mistakes. Second take, hopefully still very good vibe, but like hopefully you fix the mistakes. If you don't fix the mistakes there, then like it can start to be diminishing returns after that. So yeah, We Do We in that one, we're just straight down and like, okay, I guess we'll do one more just to be safe. And then the second take was nowhere close to it. So yeah, but it is really beautiful to hear them together like that.
Yeah, I want to talk about Carry You Home, but first I'll go to the Archer. Interesting that it's a wordless track. You got the vocals on there, but that's an entirely wordless composition. I don't know if I was expecting that when I got there. Like, it has the kind of southern rock side of it too, almost, I
Right.
would say. And I could picture where that's going with either Joanna or Joey, like maybe delivering a lyric or something, but it's a wordless tune.
Yeah, and like I did take a minute of like try, I did start writing some lyrics to it, and none of it really fit the way that just the pure sound of Joanna's voice, sounded. That was like how I heard it. And then Joey ended up adding some of his own vocal stuff near the end. But yeah, so something about it where it's like, I think having it, I think part of it was also like the it was cool to start working with language because you were able to like express some things that you can't in or that you can't at least express so clearly in instrumental music. But at the same time, there is a beautiful thing about instrumental music in that there is stuff that's open to interpretation. You know, like you can have whatever you were feeling when you made it, and that might even change over time as you play a composition more and more. But like, you know, whoever hears it is going to interpret it how they want. It was something like this soulful, like especially that outro to the Archer and everything was get Joey and Joanna and like the tambourines and the claps and the, you know, just get into like this whole like church vibe at the end and everything. It like that could be, you know, I want people to feel whatever it is they're feeling there and not anything that I was like, this is what you're supposed to be thinking about, you know.
And that way it's a good way to close out a record for sure.
Yeah, definitely. But it is interesting on the LP version, that's actually the opener for the record.
Oh.
And at first I was like, no, because that's such a closer. And then as I started putting the timing of the tracks together, I was like, well, that could be the opener. And then I started going like, oh, that could totally be the opener too, you know. So it is interesting to think of the record in an entirely different way in that respect, especially in the streaming age when so many of us are listening to one isolated track without the context of the rest of the record, you know.
Yeah, you get to reimagine the track list onto LP. That's interesting. And not even just like, oh, which tracks do I have to cut for runtime and for side A, side B, but
yeah,
like
thankfully I only
you
had to
can
cut
change.
one. So and it is funny that like Echo Delta is the one that ended up getting cut for the LP, which wasn't the original plan, but that was timing wise, that was how it worked and whatever. But Echo Delta was actually one of the first ones, especially when I started like recording like trio with Renfro and really wanted to kind of really feature him, you know. Echo Delta was the one that I wrote that it was just literally like I wrote it. It was we were recording a demo of some kind, and I like wrote it the night before. It is literally just okay. How do I get Renfro to just play all this? Because he's checked out all this Delta blues stuff and like, you know, this guy Mississippi Fred McDowell is like that's his man, you know. And so like, yeah, just I was like, how do I get him? But he also like it's also like Train, you know, like I like to say that Renfro is like Mississippi Fred McDowell beats Train, meets like, you know, Ali Farka Touré and some like West African music. He's got like, you know, and sort of Appalachian folk music as well. Like he's got like some very specific influences like that. So I like to, you know, so I just was like, how do I just want to feature him a little bit. And so I was like, well, I'm going to start with an E pedal because like that's our best place to start, you know. I want him to play all the, you know, open string stuff, and then that's what came out of that. So that was actually the first song that I wrote specifically for him, and then it ended up being the one that got cut from the LP, unfortunately. But it is, of course, available on the CD and streaming and everywhere else. So
yeah, you've dropped a couple of West African music influences or references here. Is that a big part of your bag? Is there anything else that you might want to point to or share as like something that influenced you from there?
Oh yeah, for sure. So for me, like, yeah, so definitely Fela is one, like, as I mentioned, being from Nigeria, but like one of my biggest influences is Dudu and Daya Rose, who's like a Sabar, the master of the Sabar drum in Senegal. So, and he just passed like about 10 years ago or so. So, but he like basically, you know, it's like it's an old tradition, but he basically like completely revolutionized that whole tradition in the, you know, through the 20th century. And he also, you know, he collaborated with jazz musicians and stuff. And he toured with the Rolling Stones and he like did all this other stuff, but like his whole like drum ensemble is basically him and his kids and his grandkids and his nephews and his nieces and his like everyone. One of his nephews like worked at a sneaker shop on my block in Harlem. Like literally I went in there with drums and I had like transcribed some of the stuff and had some on YouTube from like when I was in school, and I had some drums and he said like, oh, you play drums? I was like, yeah. I said, where are you from? He said, Senegal. I said, oh, check this out. And I showed him the video. He said, that's my uncle. And sure enough, I found him like playing in a video with it. He was like amazing. And he had played with the Rolling Stones with his uncle and everything. It was incredible. But but yeah, so like that's one of my biggest influences for sure. And if you and the on the duo EP that Renfro and I did, it's called Primordial. It came out last year. We did a song on that called Calls, where we basically just grew out of Renfro had studied certain stuff. He studied Ali Farka Touré, particularly like stuff from Burkina Faso and Mali, and I had studied this stuff from Senegal, and we like sort of went back and forth showing each other some of these rhythms and then pieced together this song. So it's made up of some stuff from Dudu and Dia Rose and some stuff from Ali Farka Touré and some other like the Kubali brothers. Is that their last name? I'm trying to remember now. I find it somewhere, but they're from Burkina Faso, so they you know, a lot of stuff from them as well. So yeah, that's definitely like, so Renfro and I, that's definitely like some shared influences that we have. So we've passed some stuff back and forth.
Have you had the chance to go to that part of the world yet?
No, and it's funny, like I got, after I posted this, so this was in 2014, this was like my final, it was my so John Riley at Manhattan School of Music, he would have all the drummers do a major transcription to perform for each other every year. Just get all the drummers together and everyone play their transcriptions. And so, you know, most people do like drum set, whatever. And I like had been checking out so much of this you know, Sabar drumming that I was like, man, it would be really cool if I could adapt this to drum set. And so I started transcribing it, and he helped me out a little bit to like figure out how to adapt it. And it was just like a good excuse to finish a full, you know, like it's like a full 5 minutes of like, you know, 50 drummers playing or whatever. So like, and figuring out how to adapt that to, you know, 4 or 5 drums and a couple of cymbals, you know. So so I did that, and I posted it on YouTube, like back in all, you know, it's funny now, the quality of the video is not very good. And, you know, given it was 2014, but like, I posted this video, and it actually, like, you know, it still gets pretty consistent views. And right after it came up, right after I posted it, I got a message from someone who ran, there's like a summer program that Dudu used to run, and there was someone who like had run the program, and he hit me up and said, hey, do you want to come to Senegal this summer? And I was like, they were like, everything's paid for except for your flight. So if you can get here, then, you know, do the thing. You could, you know, study with Dudu and his family or whatever. I said, oh, it'd be amazing. I looked up flights. It was like $2,500. It was something like,
oh,
you know, I was just like, well, unfortunately, no. And then Dudu passed like less than a year later. So that was the last summer that he was involved with the thing. So I was like, so yeah, it's yeah, it's one of those things where I was like, man, I wish I could have found the bread to go do it, because that would have been an amazing experience.
man.
It's okay, you know. This is what happens, you know. Choices. This is one of the songs. Choices. We all make choices every day. We make thousands of them a day, and you know, have to live with them. So
there are 2 lyric snippets that I wrote down from Choices that were some of the most memorable lyrics on the record for me. One of them is, if I stand still, I'll be swept aside.
Yeah. That's sometimes it takes, you know, what I was saying about like how it takes like more energy to ignore what you're actually feeling than it does to just feel it and keep it moving. Same thing when it comes to like decision and specifically indecision, like being, you know, and this is definitely some ADHD stuff as well, where like but you know, this applies to a lot of people, where you want to know the big picture and you want to know every option before you select one. And sometimes knowing every option is not practical or feasible or whatever. And I've had that actually at various stages of getting this record out into the world, is where I'm like, okay, well, I just got to figure out what I'm going to do about X. And then it's like 3 weeks of me just being frozen in, you know, indecision, because I'm like, well, I checked out 6 out of 10 options, but I still need to find the time to check out these other. It's like all 6 of them were good options. You could have picked any of them. Nothing would have been fine. But this is really the insidiousness of perfectionism too, where it's like like you think that picking the perfect option is going to protect you, and really it's just, you know, this is the in kind. This is the lyric about aiming at a target that even I can't see. This is the whole thing. It's like a perfectionism is a moving target that even if you hit it, I mean, first of all, perfect is imaginary. Like if you had to describe perfect to me, you couldn't, and I couldn't describe it to you. None of us can. It's like intangible and made up, and we, you know, yeah, we're like chasing this thing that like its entire function is basically to make you feel like you're always just less than that perfect thing, you know. So so yeah, it can be really insidious in that way where it's like all of these are very good options, and like nothing is going to be significantly worse because you chose a thing, and in fact everything is going to be significantly better because you made a choice, because you kept moving. So in this case, the imagery of the like, there's some very Canadian imagery, right? Like being on, you know, being on ice. That like, you know, when spring comes, like better times are going to come and this ice is going to melt, and if you don't move, like you're you know, you're going to have some problems. So like it actually takes more effort to just to hold yourself still than it is to just go with the tide and let like, you know, roll with the changes that are coming. Whereas like being totally resistant to any kind of change or any kind of transition is can create a lot more problems for you and take a lot more energy and be a lot more headache, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big theme with a couple of different sides of the inspiration that we've talked about, but
Yeah.
there's
What was the
one.
other lyric you wrote down? Yeah.
The other one, it's actually a perfect answer for that. You basically just you showed it right there, because the other side of the coin on the same song choices is trust myself, let the current flow.
That's it. That's it. You know, like the you know, and I remember like, and this was something that my therapist had said to me at some point. I think that was kind of where I got the I think that's why maybe the imagery was in my head, but I remember saying something about like, listen, like I'm not an outdoorsy person, but like, you know, as far as I know, they always say that if you like end up in a river, you know, you're not supposed to fight the current. You're supposed to just like flow with it, you know. And I was like, yes, I've also heard that. Not that I've had to use it practically, even being from a city that's two major rivers, you know, that's probably why I've heard it. But the yeah, like the that is the whole thing, is that like, you know, so it's a good metaphor for just like in life, like we can't if we just like fight everything that comes our way, it's gonna, you know, it's not gonna be so good for you, you know. It's like we have to, you know, just be able to like accept what's happening, whereas instead of wasting all of our energy on, you know, resisting it. And that is the thing, right? Like if we like, hard stuff is going to happen, you know, like pain is inevitable, but like joy isn't, you know. So like if we spend all of our time like like resisting pain and resisting everything uncomfortable and whatever, like we're also going to end up resisting joy as well, and like and you know, all of the like good things in life, because we've spent all of our time resisting. So now all we know how to do is resist, you know, instead of just like accepting what it is, good or bad, you know. That's something
Yeah.
I'm working toward, you know.
Yeah, it's an aspirational idea, but it's one that, yeah, I can feel you aiming for in this record and kind of capturing it from a bunch of different sides.
Yeah. And so I think one of the big things with this record is really just, instead of like, you know, trying to, yeah, it's really just like, instead of, you know, trying to sort of protect myself and keep, you know, these things to myself that I only share with friends or, you know, loved ones or whatever, like why? This is one of the biggest things, right? Like just, there's a lot of people who could relate to any of these ideas or conversations that I have with people in my personal life any given day. Like, why wouldn't we put this into the music? But because it requires a level of vulnerability, you know, and to so, but that's the thing. If everyone's just pretending that they're okay all the time, and everyone's pretending that like they're not having a hard time, and especially in, you know, like the current state of the world and everything, like stuff is hard. Everything, like, you know, everything is crazy expensive, and like nothing is like everything that, you know, we thought we had coming to us is crumbling away, and like everything that is like, no one is able to just live comfortably, you know, or anything, except for like the extremely wealthy. So like, and they don't need even a fraction of that wealth. So like we're sort of just one of these things where it's like but we're all just going to keep going on and keep pretending that we're okay and that we have, that we're not having a hard time. Like, we're all having a hard time, and that's okay. So that was kind of a big part of it. It's like, I'm doing my best. I can't like put these other expectations of like, where you're supposed to be at a certain age or by a certain stage of life or whatever. It's, it's not practical or helpful or anything,
Yeah, wow, because I was gonna close on Carry You Home, and that's interesting to pick up that and take it there because that song has a bit of a different focus. Because on that song, you're more oriented towards your son, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's for my son, but it also is written for sort of the younger me as well, and it kind of works. I think that it actually sort of works across the board for partners, friends, anyone that you're caring for, that you're just the whole idea is like, I'm here. I'm here and I'll care for you in any way that I possibly can, and that has to include, things that we that has to include like our inner self, our younger self, our inner child, and things that we either hopefully should have had or wish we had or whatever. There's I think that we all have like we can all learn a lot by spending some time with that. And that's sort of what the whole idea of sitting and having a conversation and just finding out like what is what is my younger self trying to tell me. And then at the same time, I'm like going through all of this while, my son is growing up, and I'm thinking like, a big part of being a parent is, like the biggest gift that we can give them is working through our own stuff. That's really that's really the biggest thing, so I'm just trying to be like the best, I'm trying to do my best. And that doesn't mean being perfect. That just means doing my best. It's like, it's and like listening when he wants to tell me something, and like sharing my own experience and not pretending that I don't struggle with X, Y, or Z as well, or whatever, So, so yeah. And Joey also has like, well, at the time he had one daughter, and has since had a second one as well, in between when we wrote that song and when the record is coming out. So and Joey's one of my like parenthood inspirations as well. So I like, just being able to sort of work with that and have like some really like deep conversations about what it's like to be someone's blueprint for a human, because that's really what, as parents, that's really what we are, right? Like our kids' brains are being wired every day by like the way that we behave and interact with them and everything. Like there's no, your primary caregivers growing up, your brain is literally going like, oh, this is what a person is. This is how people act. This is what, like they're learning all the time. And it's especially amazing now. Like my son's 2.5. So he's like, he repeats everything that we say. He's like, he's got his whole own personality. He makes jokes. He like, like it's a whole thing. And he's just learning new stuff every single day, and it's really like the acceleration of learning and development is really like blows me away. So it's kind of up to me to like, and like, but he, at the same time, he doesn't have emotional regulation skills and things like that because he's 2.5. He's not supposed to yet, like, but like, historically, like our parents like expected kids to act like adults, and so that like, so, and so like, this is the thing is like, now that we know enough about brain development, know whatever, like kids are supposed to be kids, and they're supposed to do all this stuff. They're not doing this stuff to like be, like to, you're not doing this to spite me. It's like you're doing this because you're doing exactly what your brain wants to do. And in some cases, like having ADHD, I actually sort of relate to him better in a lot of ways, because I'm like, yeah, my brain only wants to do what it wants to do as well. Like it only wants to do interesting and fun things. I don't want to do any of the other stuff. So it's like, in that way, it is sort of a toddler approach, right? So I like actually do fully get it, but I just also like am an adult and have to do all the not fun stuff, So anyway, so it's a so yeah, and like, and I really just hope that like as he gets older and he's able to like, it's something that he will have forever, this song, and be able to I mean, also the whatever I am able to give him as he grows up, but the song is especially important to me for that reason, you know, because as he gets older, he's gonna actually discover it and be able to listen to the words and you know, feel whatever he feels as a result of that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
it's so cool.
we got a video coming out that's all I got my dad to digitize a bunch of he had like a bunch of, you know, our camcorder videotapes from when I was the exact same age as my son. So like we literally got the
Oh,
camcorder when I was like for Christmas 1990, so I was literally the exact same age that my son is now, like almost to the day. And so like yeah, so we've got a music video coming out in like soon, week or two or something, and that it's gonna have all the probably by the time this interview comes out. So it's got a whole bunch of home movies in it. So I'm excited about that. It's very
yeah.
cool, not gonna lie.
It's so cool that you've got Joey on the track and that you described that he has that relationship with you in terms of him being some couple steps ahead in parenting timelines and stuff. That's a special thing to have captured. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Man, you are such a real one. I've had so much fun chatting with you about this record. I
Appreciate
love the
you, man.
record. I missed hearing you in other contexts. You know, like I said, I only heard you with Braxton, but like you came with Will Bonus, you know, you've worked with Jocelyn
That's right.
Gould,
That's right.
you know, all
Yeah.
this Winnipeg people like Quincy Davis or something like these people
Yeah.
that I've heard, but you know, I didn't get a chance to hear you play with like
Yeah.
Jocelyn and Will or anything like that. So I hope I get to at some point.
I hope so too. I gotta definitely make it up there again soon. I gotta make something happen one way or another.
Yeah.
But definitely. But it was, you know, really fun talking to you. So appreciate you having me on.
Right on.